For a movie to be good, it's hard because like every department kind of has to be great. Every department really was great. Like, do you know, and the costumes, it's like they have to be old, but they have to look like you wear them. They can't just like look old and look brand new. Then you're out of the movie already. Like the attention to detail is so important, and it was like really everyone was just like really good at their jobs.
Clint, I'd love to start with you. Dennis Johnson, who wrote the novella Train Dreams, is, you told me at Sundance, one of your favorite authors. So this was quite a thing to take on for you, very personally important. But there is a really cool fate, kismet type story behind how Joel Edgerton became cast in this film. Do you mind telling us that story?
Yeah. First of all, thank you all for being here again. Thank you for staying. I know there's a lot that you could be at right now, so thank you for being here. Yeah, Joel, we spent when we started writing the script and adapting the book, we spent like a year and a half or 2 years. Greg and I, my co-writer, Greg Cuidar, and I, writing the script, and then we finally it was time to find who's going to play Grenier, and it's just such a needle hole of a role. Like, it just felt like it needed the perfect person, and Joel felt like the perfect person, and I really hoped that he would be into it, and but hadn't. You never know when you send it to somebody if it's going to connect with them or not. And I think he got it on like a Wednesday, and sent a letter and the script, and then on Saturday I opened Instagram and he slid into my DMs on Instagram. I was like, "Hi, it's Joel." And I was like, "Oh, hi." So I was like, he must like it. And then I flew up to Chicago where he was shooting something and met with him. And one of the first things that he said was that he had actually been gifted this book back years prior when he was shooting Boy Erased, which he directed and wrote. And someone had given him the book and he fell in love with it and wanted to make it. And then he inquired about the rights, and someone had the rights, and it turns out to be our producers on this film had the rights. And so he's like, well, there goes that dream. So, but it came back around, as dreams do.
He told me it made him really believe in fate, and I think he's right.
Oh, wow.
Yeah. I can't imagine anyone else playing this role. Can you talk a little bit about how Joel set out to play the role and how you talked about it, because it's quite an interior kind of part. The dialogue is sort of minimal. He has to convey so much. Can you talk about that?
Yeah, that's the thing when I say thinking about the perfect person. There's not only some aspects just in terms of the nuts and bolts of you need somebody who's the right age and who you can age up and age down, right? You also need somebody who looks like they could be a logger in this time and that you believe that. And so already the window gets quite narrowed. And then you have to think about who is an actor who has such depth and that they can do nothing and that you still feel a color wheel of emotions coming across. And who is somebody who can say 3 words and yet you feel like this waterfall of emotions coming out. And he's just so beautiful at that. There's so much in his eyes, there's so much in his face. That he really had all of that you felt like you could get across this man of few words, but somebody with a very deep interior life. And then I met him, and one thing I felt like I saw when I met him that I hadn't seen before was he's very I don't know, kind of boyish and funny, and I feel like we hadn't seen that in a lot of his roles, and I wanted to bring that out, that aspect, especially when he's at home.
I love that where you see him and Felicity Jones kind of rolling around and joking with each other. And I always imagined a little bit of that might have been improvised between them. Was it at all? It felt very natural.
There was a lot. They were great together. They were fantastic. They had wanted to work together for a while, and this was their chemistry was just kind of perfect from the beginning. There was a lot of that where we had our scenes, we'd film. And then if we had 15 minutes left before we needed to break for lunch, we were shooting split, so we'd start at 3 in the afternoon and go till 3 in the morning. And then if we had we'd be wrapping up, we had 15 minutes left, and it's like at sunset, we're about to break for lunch. We would just say like, okay, you guys get out there and we're gonna put the chickens out and you're gonna feed the chickens. And then Adolfo's, our amazing cinematographer, Adolfo is chasing them around. Yes, please give him a round of applause. He's incredible at being able to like make a moment out of anything and make it look beautiful like we had always composed it that way. I think he's incredible. And so we would just piece those things in as we could. And there are certain scenes, there's one scene that became a dialogue scene and became this beautiful moment where they're laying in bed before he goes off back to the cut, and she's kind of like tracing his back, and they're talking. On script, that was just like she traces his things on his back. It was very simple. And then we kind of just like built it out. And so it was very much that like mix of like, okay, let's hit these dialogue scenes and get them that we know we need, and then let's create more. And they were just beautiful at making those things.
Kerry, I'd love to hear about your journey to playing Claire. I know you have a farm yourself. And I wondered, did that really resonate for you, the way that she is so grounded in nature? She finds her kind of worth in being part of nature, and that's what she teaches him, ultimately.
Yeah, there was a lot of similarities. That was kind of why I wanted to do it. I really felt like I kind of am Claire a little bit. But also the script as a whole was so beautiful. There were like little passages in the script that when I read them, like they were, like I almost wanted to cry. They were so beautiful, and I kind of realized that Clint kind of saw the world the way I see the world, that sometimes like really beautiful things move you as much as sad things. And so I just wanted to be in the movie because I thought it was beautiful. And also I've known Joel for a very long time, and funnily enough, like after the time of the Oscars, I was like, yeah, of course you have to be somewhat like good to get nomination, but there is an element of luck, like, there just is, I think. And I remember thinking one day, I was like, gosh, like, I really feel like Joel Edgerton is like that actor who's like always good. Like, he just always is good. And just like at any minute, I feel like it's going. And then this came with Joel's name, and I was like, that's weird. Oh my gosh. So there was many the reasons that I wanted to be in it. But I do feel that nature in a movie, like a character, those are movies that I really like. Banshees kind of had the same thing, and The Revenant, and like there's so many movies. And I do think that nature, like when you're really sad, does heal you, because you do kind of go, oh yeah, I guess I am just like small, ultimately, and that is like a life experience. Like death is part of life, and the healing aspect of nature I really liked, and I think that's important for people to remember how healing nature is.
I really love the way the story is told, in that, there's that amazing fire tower scene where you say the insects you can't even see are just as important as the river. And that comes somewhere, a good way before, many years before he finally gets it. It's so beautifully paced. I'm just fangirling over you, sorry. But can you talk as well about that fire tower scene? Because I'm really curious as to how you built that kind of sense of deep connection with Joel. You seem to know each other on a deep level.
Well, because we did, like we did this movie, Jeannie, like early 2000s, we did a movie called Ned Kelly with Heath Ledger, like it was that long ago, and we were very young, like I was a teenager at the time, so I knew that was going to be in my favor. In the script it said like, Claire feels like an old friend, and I was like, oh well, that'll be easy because I am an old friend. And so there was an ease with me and Joel. I was only on the movie a couple of days, so it was very easy for me to slip into being like close to him. And I agree with you on the boyish aspect. When I read it, I remember thinking that he was going to be really good at like, there's a softness to Joel. So the fire tower for me was really more about, I knew that it was this person, a character that was more like an observer. So it really was more about Joel's character than it was about my character. You know, I know she says her husband died, but that was really, it's really only so he can open up a little bit. So I think sometimes like knowing your place in the story is kind of half of it. It wasn't really like, I'm gonna, you know, roll up and like bawl my eyes out and like steal a movie or whatever. It was like the audience are like, what is this man thinking? Do you know, he's such a silent man, he's such a humble man. And it's so then when he does reveal it, it's like so heartbreaking. It was all in the script, like, you know, and it really was. And also the cinematographer was me, Joel, and Adolfo on the balcony, so it felt very intimate. It didn't feel like there was a whole crew watching us. It was like the trees and the birds were what we were looking at. It was really nice, yeah.
Parker, something that really struck me about this film is that you, in editing, you have to get a sense that decades are passing, but without feeling this kind of big tonal shift. It feels almost like we've been dreaming the whole thing the whole time. And this kind of sensibility is very constant. How did you work together with Clint on achieving that in the edit?
I mean, a lot of the time passing, I would say, you guys had figured out already on set. You know, I think a lot of those like big things, you know, I think of like the reveal of him on the train at the very end. You know, it's this like sweeping camera motion to like reveal him, you know, sort of looking older. Yeah, I don't know. I think working with Clint, one of the first things that I kind of did was I went back to the book, and I was sort of like, as I was assembling the movie, you know, because you get the movie in parts, you know, and they're shooting it all out of order, and so you're trying to wrap your head around certain scenes, and there's all these holes, and you're kind of like, okay. And so I went back to the book, and was like struck by how, I don't know, there was just the Dennis Johnson like language of it, and like the chronology was all over the map, and I was kind of like, whoa, this book is like wild. I'd read it before, but like seeing it with fresh eyes. And like one of the first things I did was like I started, you know, there's this narrator, and like when you're the editor, you kind of look and you're like, well, who's going to be the narrator? It's like, well, I'm going to be the narrator in the beginning, unfortunately.
Something he came to regret after.
Yeah. And I don't know, there was just like a lot of like connective tissue, and I was kind of like, okay, this will just be a crutch. And I kind of went back to the book and like recorded a bunch of the narration, and we ended up taking out, 75% of all that stuff that I recorded. But it helped us like find the movie, I think, and like bring the sensibility of the book into play. And like, you know, hearing Dennis Johnson's words, you know, and then like, you know, I would live with a line forever, and I'd be like, oh, this is so delicious. And Clint would be like, what if we change this word? You know, I'd be like, no, that is. And then I would like record it. I'd be like, oh yeah, that's way better. No dig on Dennis Johnson, of course, but it was like, we were like, you know, we were building on something, and we were like making the movie its own voice. I guess Clint was. I was just trying to go backwards. Clint was taking us forwards. But yeah, hope that answers your question. But.
It does. Clint, you and Greg, your filmmaking partner, were Oscar nominated for Sing Sing. Yes. But this is your first adaptation of a work of fiction. So I was really curious about your process together, and I know that you took a very special trip in terms of, you know, your research and getting into the story and the thinking of Dennis Johnson. So can you tell us about that trip?
Yeah, it was something that research was always a big part of every project we had done up to this one. With Jockey, we went out and like lived with jockeys for a while and slept in the barns and like did all the things that they did. And with Sing Sing, we went and volunteered in the program the theater program that's based on. And with this one, where you're dealing with something where it's like logging in the early 1900s, late 1800s, like what do you do? How do you be a part of that? And there's a lot you can dig into with the book, and then with like research materials of just historical books. But like we wanted to be a part of that place, and so we went out to the actual Bonners Ferry in the Panhandle of Idaho, and just like lived in that space while we were like for a couple of weeks while we were writing the script. And we stayed. We like found this cabin that we could rent in this on the Moye River, which is the river that Grenier lives on, and incidentally, the river that Dennis Johnson and his wife Cindy lived on for a long time while he was writing the book. And it was just amazing to like meet these old like logging families that had been logging families forever up there, and we met the like Kootenai people who are buying back this land that was taken from them in generations past, and they're reintroducing those sturgeon into the river. There's an image early on in the film that's like this like 10-foot fish that was pulled out of the river, and that came from just like being up there and going to the museum in Bonners Ferry and seeing all of these photos where like there are tons of photos of people catching these like 10 and 11-foot sturgeon out of the rivers up there. They don't really exist anymore because they've all been overfished and pulled out. But the Kootenai tribe is trying to like reintroduce them. And then incidentally, as part of that trip, while we were writing, we're driving around, you're going on these long drives. We went out with a naturalist to like see the area. And then we're listening to the book on tape read by Will Patton, who ends up narrating this. And it was just like, yeah, it was just so, he narrates the audiobook of this book. And he just like, I had read the book like 5 times in trying to write it, and then I was listening to him, and I was like, I've never read this book before. This is something totally new. And so, yeah, luckily then he agreed to do it in the end. But he was also part of this kismet of like all of these people who had all these connections, like Joel being connected with the book, Kerry being connected with Joel. Will Patton, turns out, was like very close with Dennis Johnson when he was alive, and close friends with him. Yeah, and so there's just all these amazing things like that came along the way where you feel like, all right, there's something special about this.
Yeah, it's like Parker was saying, you know, going back to the book, you were driving around actually listening to the book in the place where he lived. It's kind of amazing. Parker, I'd also like to ask you about the way that you worked with the score and the sound design in terms of the edit, because I love the score of this movie. It's stunning. Can you speak to that a little bit?
Yeah, well, I mean, I was lucky on this movie that like we were still sort of cutting as music was starting to come in, which was great because I had worked with Clint on Jockey and also with Bryce Desner. And, I mean, the score that he wrote for Jockey is like one of my favorite scores. I remember hearing the first cue that comes in at the beginning and just being like, oh, this is how the movie sounds. Like, this is great. And so I was really excited to see what he was going to come up with here. And it was like extra fun because then he would like give us scores and we would be like, oh, we're still messing around with this scene. Like we can cut it to the music, and it would like give it new life. And we also, you know, there's like a theme that repeats throughout the film, which was something that he had written. I guess he had written it for one scene.
No, he wrote it off picture. It was just like we had sent him like a bunch of clips, and then that was one of the first things he sent was just this became the theme of the movie. But
yeah, and it ended up becoming, you know, we were just like, oh, we'll just put that in. Like we ended up putting it throughout, and it sort of acts as this sort of like, you hear it, you know, 3, 4, 5 times in the movie, and it's sort of like each act has its like, this is the big theme, this is the big turning point of the movie kind of thing. So we like got to really, you know, work very like passing back and forth with Bryce and like, you know, forming the movie rather than the score like forming around the movie was like forming around the score and vice versa. And it was this very like fluid thing. And same with the sound design. We've worked with Lee Salavan, our sound designer, now on. He also worked with us on Sing Sing and Jockey. He would be sending us sort of like a bed of sound design for a specific scene, like the when his daughter, or when the girl shows up at the end, hearing her sounds and her voices and stuff like that. He would like send us early versions of things so that we could like be, again, like the movie would form around this work that is typically sort of like this extra layer of icing on the top of the cake at the end. Rather, it was like mixed in, and it was all part of the soup, which was cool.
I think that comes across because you feel like it's all intrinsic. It's kind of it all goes together. It's not kind of a score on top. It's edited with music, and it certainly feels like that. I hear the shoot was 28 days in Washington, and you said, Kerry, you were there for a couple of days?
2, wasn't it?
Yeah.
What was it like on set? Because I heard that, one thing Clint said was that he was really grateful that everybody just didn't expect it to be luxurious. It was just kind of pretty rustic. So can you talk about the experience shooting?
It was still beautiful though, because we were like out in nature, so it was like all these beautiful trees and everything. It was clean air. Like, shooting in New York's a bit of a nightmare. Like it's great and all, but like parking and like all that hullabaloo. So it actually was quite lovely. We were alone, and the makeup guy, Corey, did 3 billboards. So there's quite a, some crew members, when you bump into people you haven't bumped into in years, it's a great feeling, and especially that was a success. And working with people who, you're all in it because you're like, this is beautiful. Like, these scripts are so rare. And the hair department and all, like it's like for a movie to be good, it kind of like it's hard because like every department kind of has to be great, and that's hard sometimes. But like every department really was great, like and the costumes, it's like they have to be old, but they have to look like you wear them. They can't just like look old and look brand new. That's a real kind of like, then you're out of the movie already. Like, there was everything, the attention to detail is so important, and it was like really, everyone was just like really good at their job. So it was a good feeling, I think. I had 2 days, so.
They were the 2 good days on the shoot.
Before I let you all go, I'd love to ask each of you what the lasting effect of making this film has been on you. I know you've lived with this material for a very long time, especially Clint, and the book obviously very, very much affected you. But what has been the legacy of this film for you? For me, I just found it the most heartening, uplifting story about finding happiness within, just in existing. And that's really what he finds at the end, I think.
That's lovely. That sounds great.
Okay. We try. Anyway.
Do you guys want to, what have you, I'd be curious to hear.
I just think like, and I'm not being a downer or anything, but I just think like life is intense, I just find life very intense and sad, and but that's everybody's life, even and so I think it makes me kind of think like you don't really know the hand everyone gets dealt that you meet in real life, and so try and maybe lead with a bit of be gentle, like, because you just don't know. Like, that was so sad. Like, he's just so alone, that man, and I don't know, it just makes me feel more. Not that I needed to feel more, to be quite honest, but just makes me feel, and isn't that the purpose of art, I suppose,
Absolutely.
I don't know, what really stuck with me about this movie was his role as a father. I have a 2-year-old, and so I felt this like connection. I remember when we first started, the first stuff you guys shot was all the stuff at the cabin, and I remember like, going to like wash a dish or something and seeing my daughter and my wife out in the backyard and being like, wow, this is just like the movie I'm cutting. It's like we have this like little craftsman house and and so I don't know, and the work work-life balance that he's struggling with in the beginning. I really connected with that, and I don't know what I've pulled away from it, but that's what always sort of feels personal to me about this movie. So.
That's beautiful.
Yeah, there's a lot, and it's tough to like. I think one of the big things is like, I've spent a lot of my life earlier like looking to the next thing, and you're like working towards the next thing, and you sometimes don't remember that like your life is happening right now, and to appreciate those moments. And something that struck me more now, like seeing it with people, is like there's this moment where he's longed for his family, and I have young children as well, and he has this moment where when his daughter returns, and he has this memory of the child throwing the ladle in the water and it floating away. And it's like this thing that as a parent you'd be like, fuck, you threw the thing in the water, like now I'm gonna have to buy a new thing, and like and it's a thing you could get frustrated by, and yet for him it's one of his like most cherished memories. And I try and think about that now, and just like appreciate the moments, and remember how quickly life passes, and try and appreciate it when you have it.
Wow. Well, I just want to congratulate you all on such a beautiful movie. It lives in my head all the time. It really affected me. I love it so much. I hope you all did too. Thank you so much for being here.
Thank you very much. Thank you all.
Thank you. Joel Edgerton is like that actor who's like always good. Like he just always is good. And just like at any minute, I feel like it's going. And then this came with Joel's name, and I was like, that's weird. Oh my gosh. We did a movie called Ned Kelly with Heath Ledger, like it was that long ago, and we were very young, like I was a teenager at the time, so I knew that was going to be in my favor. In the script it said like, Claire feels like an old friend, and I was like, oh well, that'll be easy because I am an old friend.